I will survive the Red Death, so long as I have this. Hey folks, Prince Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man, at your plague avoiding services. How are you all? I'm doing very, very well. Yes, we're going to talk about, whoa, it's hot in there, the awesome Masque of the Red Death from Roger Corman, king of the quickies, but also the king of Edgar Allan Poe adaptations. 1964 this film came out. Roger Corman, who had already done a couple of Poe adaptations, finally got to make the one he really wanted to do, which is, although a very slender short story by the master of the macabre himself, he managed to combine the Masque of the Red Death with another short story called Hop Frog. And he beautifully brings the two ideas together in a perfect combination of hellish debauchery and depravity and evil incarnate, with the pragmatic philosophical side of death and pestilence, and innocence being corrupted and innocence fighting back. A wonderful tableau of torture, death and insanity, and one of the most visually sumptuous and sublime works of cinematic art that we've ever had. In fact, in the horror genre, I would put this right alongside, if not slightly above, I'll get back to you on that, Suspiria by Dario Argento, a film I have discussed many times. And again, another visual tour de force with pounding music. And the music to this, which you're hearing right now, The Masque of the Red Death by David Lee, which was a strange choice at the time. David Lee was known for his jazz compositions and quite a bit of a doyen of the nightclub circuit, but he comes up with a baroque, exotic, inventive, very creative, very eerie and profoundly haunting and memorable score for this movie. So, this movie, 1964, this was, hippies and the peace movement hadn't really come in yet, but it was an era of change, of rebellion, of revolution, in music, in fashion, and the whole counterculture, movement was about to hit full swing. And it's hard not to see elements of that creeping into this movie. Prince Prospero, played by Vincent Price, who was locked into a deal with AIP, distributors. You couldn't do any other Poe movies unless it was for AIP, and Roger Corman was the king of the Poe AIP movies. So the relationship between Vincent Price and Roger Corman was electric. These two were guaranteed to come up with something of class and value which would outstrip what in many other ways could be very meagre budgets. This film comparatively had a better budget and far more shooting time. Corman was the king of getting a movie out in 2 days. Less. He could just, that was it. Start filming, don't stop filming, that's it. That's a wrap, everybody, we've done it. But this, he had weeks to do it. Initially he was given 6 weeks, which was an absolute, my God, an extravagance for him. But that was shortened. But it didn't matter. He had plenty of time to elaborate from the sets left over at Elstree from the previous production, to remodel those, repaint those, just retweak them. So he had all of the standing sets there. He had great behind the scenes crew, a wonderful score, wonderful writing, absolutely incredible photography from Nicholas Roeg. Nick Roeg, who would go on to do The Man Who Fell to Earth and of course Don't Look Now, an incredible filmmaker in his own right, but what an eye, what a visual eye. Again, pre-staging the likes of Dean Cundy working for John Carpenter, ultra widescreen imagery and the camera gliding seamlessly, fluid-like, down corridors and halls, along staircases and through banquet halls and around castle ramparts. It took you on a ride. Things would go past you and you felt like you were in there. And the colouring, the Red Death itself, but there's reds, yellows, greens, blues, purples, different rooms. In the original short story there's 7 chambers, and in the film you will get 7 different coloured rooms, and you will get gel lighting, incredible shadow play, beautifully enigmatic compositions, very elaborate, a large cast of extras who are populating a lot of the frame for a lot of the time, and just wonderful dexterous camera work. Occasionally, because of the age of the film and the fact that they were still using dolly tracks and that, you would get a bit of it as the camera comes towards you. It would sort of do that a little bit, and you'll notice it. Of course, I'm reviewing the film, but it's because Studio Canal have just released from a 4K scan a wonderful restoration of the original full uncut movie. They scoured both sides of the Atlantic to get all the bits necessary, because the film did receive various cuts in different territories for different reasons: violence, blasphemy, going against certain religious codes, stuff like that. But this version now that we have is the full uncut version. Nothing missed out, it's all in there and it all flows seamlessly, even though it's been culled from various different sources. But anyway, the film itself, yeah. We're in some kind of quasi-medieval setting, and a plague is ravaging the land. And the Red Plague itself will reduce its victims to livid crimson, agonised victims, blood popping out of their pores, literally sweating gore, and then they will die, of course. And it's just completely ransacking the entire countryside. Hard not to see kind of connections with what's happening at the moment, especially when the story takes the idea that Prince Prospero, Vincent Price, one of the aristocratic, debauched bastards of the era and the area, brings in all the rest of his brigands of baronial debauchery and that, the elite, his high class, and he will secrete them all within the walls of his castle, his chateau, and keep them safe from the plague and all the death and destruction outside. He won't let any villagers in. In fact, any try, he'll have them crossbowed to death, or just leave them, die of the plague. I don't need you. And he's just there with his falcon on his shoulder, and his robes and all of that, and his acolytes, because Prince Prospero is a devil worshipper. Yes, he's one of those guys. As I said before, this was made during an era of counterculture revolution, and in many ways it's hard not to see Prince Prospero not perhaps as a staunch Tory politician, a bit of royalty indulging in child sacrifices and rituals, which this guy does, but he's not one of that elite. He's a celebrity. He's more of a pop star, a rock star. He has ideas far and above his station, and he's enjoying his own celebrity status. That's what Vincent Price brings to this. It's an air of mock nobility, an air of fake regalness, which is just not his by birthright, but his because I've won over everybody here, because I'm the most decadent and the most exciting, most charming, and I've gained so much power. People are in my thrall. I can control them, I can humiliate them, I can kill them at a whim. People will be dying just to be my friend. And that's what happens. So he has all this entourage of devotees, which he will liberally take the piss out of. You, Don Sanchez, you're nothing but a pot-bellied pig. Be a pig. So in front of everyone, he will start snorting and rolling around on the ground. And you're laughing at this. You're nothing but a snivelling worm. be a worm. Be a worm on the dirt. So this guy will become a worm and start slithering around to the cackles and howls of laughter of all the rest of the throng. And he can do this. That's the power that he has. At the start of the film, he rides into the village with his convoy, and there's a little child playing in the dirt. They're not going to stop for this child. But Gino, not Gino DeCampo, Gino runs out just in time and picks up the babe out of the trampling hooves of the horses and saves it. Prince Prospero's not really pleased about this. It's an act of defiance to his power. So he has Gino and Alfredo. No, I forget the other guy's name, but he's played by Nigel Green. David Weston plays Gino, and the great Nigel Green from Zulu, from Jason and the Argonauts, and from The Vampire Lovers. You'll have them put these two to death. No, no, screams young Francesca, played by Jane Asher. Red-headed, sweet, frail, pale, but beautiful Jane Asher, who was going out with a certain Paul McCartney at the time. And apparently she did bring him to the set a couple of times. But she implores Prospero, please don't say them, because that's my father, and this is my betrothed. Oh, Prospero's quite happy with that. So that's your dad, and that's your lover. What if I make them fight? One of them must die. No, please, I beg of you. And Prospero sees something in Francesca. An innocence, a rare innocence. And to a lousy, lecherous wretch like himself, well, red rag to a bull, isn't it? You're coming to the castle with me, my girl. But what of my father? Bring them too. We've not finished with them yet. So while their father and their lover are flung into the dungeons, he then takes Francesca, and his grand plan is to make her one of his kind, to seduce her with witchcraft and the occult and devil worship, to bring her on side with him and his clan. But of course, there's a bit of a problem there. He's got a wife already, played by the great Hazel Court. Hazel Court, who first came to fame with Hammer's Curse of Frankenstein, and then would be in several other Corman Poe adaptations, Premature Burial, The Raven, I think there's something else as well, can't remember now. And she, another redhead, but a much more voluptuous, and I've said before, Hazel Court and the great British actress Barbara Shelley were often lumped together from the late 50s and 60s as British horror starlets who were just really sexy and yet had an elegance and class. Well, of the two, it's always been Hazel Court. Those cheekbones, that cleavage. Good Lord, sir! I must cool myself down with some fire water. Go figure. But she is Julianna, his wife, and she is even more of a devil's disciple. She has potions, she does incantations, she performs rituals. She will brand herself on the breast with the mark of Satan, in another sense-abating sort of sequence. But she wants to make the ultimate sacrifice. She wants to really sell her soul to the devil, because she wants the same sort of power that Prospero thinks he already has. But Prospero now has other ideas, because he wants Francesca, because the ultimate prize will be to take the ultimate in innocence and purity and corrupt that. There's a lot going on here, isn't there? There's a lot going on. Of course, he will have Gino and the father, Nigel Green. He wants them to fight, but no, Francesca will not allow it. She goes along with Prospero's plans. She will be bathed by his disciples. He will remove the crucifix from her neck. He will take her on a tour around his castle. He will show her how his falcon takes prey from the air. He will show her death. He will show her torture. He will try to bewitch her with all the beauties of the horror of evil. And she gives in, but it could all be a charade. So in the end, her father and her lover will have to take Like a game of Russian roulette, there are daggers, but one of them has been laced with poison, and he must cut their forearms. Death will happen within 5 seconds. And it's in front of everybody, of course, in the great big banquet hall. One dagger is left. Nigel Green knows it's going to be his, and they've done the cuts on the forearm. And he picks up the dagger, and he shouts, "Death to Ming!" No, that's another film. He's going to go for Prospero. Prospero gets there first and skewers him, so the father has been killed. But what of their lover? He has her lover, Gino, flung out. There's no safety out there. The plague has ravaged the land. He wouldn't survive 2 days out there. I've done worse than execute him. I've exiled him to a painful, horrid death. So he gets banished, flung out there. But of course, around the landscape we have already encountered in the film's beautiful little prologue, where an old crone encounters the Red Death. The Red Death in his robes, playing tarot cards, sitting by a tree. His work is already in full sway. He's not evil, he is just death. One personification of death. And there are many in this movie. And she encounters him, and he learns of what the village is like and who's in the castle up there. So he knows what's going on. Now Gino will encounter him. He'll encounter other villagers trying to escape the plague. He'll see victims of the plague and other victims of the horrors of Prospero. But he'll encounter the Red Death. You want to say, like, he tells him Francesca's in there. You know, it's evil. There's Prospero. Go in there. Go and get your Francesca and meet me on the battlements. All will be fine. Because the Red Death is going to infiltrate this stronghold which Prospero has fortified against such an invasion. In defiance, Prospero wants a masked ball. The whole thing will culminate in the Masque, which will become the Masque of the Red Death. You'll have a dance, a masquerade. Everybody must wear costumes. Into this, you have the other Edgar Allan Poe story of Hop Frog. And Hop Frog told the story of a dwarf and his equally diminutive lover partner, who's a dancer. And she and he incur the wrath of a band of elite nobles holed up in the castle. But Hop Frog will formulate a plan where he will get everyone to wear costumes, garish, outlandish costumes, and then he'll set fire to them all. And then they will win the day and they'll escape. Well, that was a separate story called Hop Frog. In this film, Hop Frog, played by Skip Martin from Hammer's Vampire Circus, plays Hop Toad, who is a dwarf court jester that Prospero loves. But Hop Toad, I don't know why they changed the name, but Hop Toad, Skip Martin with a wonderful theatrical voice and a brazen confidence as well. His dancer partner is played by a little girl, a very pretty little girl, but voiced by an adult female. And she's meant to be just an adult, but she dances around. Now, we have one of Prospero's most lecherous lieutenants, played by the awesome Patrick Magee. So many movies. Patrick Magee, you have to have him on a leash. He's one of that little band of awesome British actors who you just couldn't control. Rebellious via drink, drugs, ego, attitude, whatever. But you had to keep these people really under control. And when you could, they could really deliver the goods. When they were just teetering on the brink, they were even better. But you don't want to let them go overboard. And Patrick Magee manages to deliver a great performance in this without going too far. So he's very interested in Esmeralda, this diminutive dancer is called. This wonderful plaything you've got there, Prospero. Where did you find her? I could have such delight with her. And she dances and cavorts around the big hall. But she spins around and she catches his goblet of wine and spills it. And Alfredo, Patrick Magee, gives her a backhand. Oh, yeah, little bitch. And all that, like. But Skip Martin playing Hop Toad pulls her to safety, takes her away to their rooms and says, she's all upset. He says, no one's ever going to hurt you again. No one's ever going to humiliate you again. I've got an idea. So from that other Edgar Allan Poe story of Hop Frog, when the masked ball has been announced, everybody, you will find costumes in all the rooms of the castle. Do what you want, wear what you want. Just be happy. We are going to have fun tonight. Everybody, Wang Chung tonight. But Hop Toad says to him that they're all going to wear masks and gowns and frocks and crowns. There'll be princes and paupers. You should be something different, something strange, something beast-like, a brute, a thing from the jungles, a gorilla. So he gets him a gorilla costume, puts the mask on him, and Alfredo is, yeah, I'm not sure about this. No, hunch your shoulders, lower your head, swing your arms, get into character. So Alfredo's getting into it, and then they unleash Alfredo into the party goers, and he starts molesting women and lying on top of them and convorting. But of course Hop Toad has got a whip, and he's like the master, and he's whipping this thing, and then whilst he's cavorting with some poor unfortunate woman, he straps him to what the chandelier, I think wooden chandelier thing, straps him to that and sets him ablaze and spins him round, and it's glorious, horrible conflagration, torturous comeuppance. It's brilliant, and Prospero himself just like cleared that mess away. That was his friend. He's not arsed, you know. Oh look, Hop Toad has performed a great little trick for us. He has such a way, doesn't he? And that is the end of the Hop Toad and Esmeralda story. We have to assume that these two will get away as well. But it's a great side story to it. The rest of the story occupies us with Julianna and her ritualistic attempts to sell her soul to the devil. She will have incantations. She has this feverish, hallucinogenic dream sequence where other dancers she lies upon an altar in a completely see-through gown. A marvellous sequence. Thank you, Mr. Corman. Thank you, Hazel. Where an African tribal witch doctor will dance and plunge a dagger into her. A Russian Cossack sort of guy will plunge a sword into her. An Egyptian will plunge a dagger. It's all the act of penetration into her writhing body. But of course, the whole thing has all been orchestrated and steered along a line by Prospero. Prospero doesn't want Julianna anymore. He wants Francesca. So that falcon that we've seen before, taking prey out of the sky, it then launches a hysterical attack upon her, and in a really shocking sequence, eat your heart out, Alfred Hitchcock, it just shreds her face and her breasts, and she hits the floor, blood all over her cleavage. Another huge thing, which especially the British censors would not like, blood on breasts, a trigger for supposedly homicidal maniacs and rapists. That's what they always said. So out goes Julianna. Of course, Gino's now re-entered the place, and he's going to try to get Francesca to freedom. But during the masked ball, Prospero has told everyone, you wear any colour you want, except for red. This is the Red Death. We don't want to see red. No red. But a figure in red robes is seen. Prospero goes after it, and of course when he confronts it, goes through all the different rooms, the different coloured rooms, it will turn round and the robe will come down, and it's his face but with the Red Death. And then a hugely operatic and really overwrought, overacted, and yet totally in tune with the rest of the movie, Vincent Price will be assailed by all the rest of his partygoers, who have all in the meantime undergone the throes of the Red Plague, and their hands will be outstretched, and he'll be and he will eventually be dragged down under these red ringed hands, and he will succumb as well. And then we will get the film's awesomely famous and memorable epilogue, where the Red Death
will sit again outside by his tree, and he'll encounter his brothers in different coloured robes. What's playing now is the ritual sacrifice sequence of Julianna selling her soul. If you listen now, it's all tribal. She's lying on the altar and all these different visions are coming up with different shaped daggers and swords to penetrate her. But he will encounter all these other brothers of death, yellow, green, blue, white, these different robes. Are these all different plagues? What are they? How many did you slay, brother? I slayed many. What about you? I slayed enough. I left some though. A dwarf couple, and a young girl and her lover, and a small child in the village. So all these little side characters, we now know that they've survived. They've been let off the hook because they've obviously defied the greater evil. And death is nothing but fair. Death, look, I come to the land, I have a reason to do this, I will slay all and whatever. But if I encounter something which is purposefully evil, I've got to get the balance just right. So in other words, he will let some people off who are totally innocent, but he will make a point of taking out those who are justifiably evil, need to be taken out. So there's a lot going on in this movie. As I say, Nick Rogue's photography is just unbelievably rich and florid. The colour scheme, it's pure Mario Bava meets Dario Argento, as I said before. So many rich colours, just you fall in love with it. It's an entrancing movie, and it's so well directed. Roger Corman could just deliver a movie, as I say, in a day, but with time and sheer joy of making a movie and having this kind of luxury of time and such a quality cast and quality sets and photography and lighting, he indulges his own talents and he comes up with a really, really well-paced, beautifully measured, beautifully acted movie with lots of dramatic high points. Although it's a horror film, it does lack monsters. There's no vampires, no werewolves. There's killings, but most of the killings happen to be of a sword fighting or crossbow variety, or the plague. Everyone dances a bit like Roman Polanski, the Dance of the Vampires. You have a great big mock operatic waltz taking place where they all cavort around, and it is choreographed. It's a proper dance sequence. In fact, you'll hear it. Let's go on to it. Where they wail around Prospero and he encounters just death everywhere around him. Listen, it is a waltz, it's a dance. But it's beautifully done. Corman commands this very active, very often packed frame full of people. I mentioned Patrick Magee keeping him on a leash. If you look in certain scenes, you imagine the big ultra wide screen. You might have Vincent Price, Prospero will be up here, walking around the table, the big banquet hall, this big circular table. But off in the bottom of the frame on the other side, you'll have Patrick Magee. Whilst everyone is meant to be talking to each other, Patrick Magee just goes into some kind of reverie of his own. And if you watch him, you will start thinking, Christ, what's he going to do next? He's just going to start laughing or throw a plate or just sit back and fart loudly. You don't know what he's going to do. And then luckily, Prospero begins to speak, and out of that little corner, Alfredo, Patrick Magee, will just look up and pay attention. It's like he's been reminded, yes, we're still filming. If you watch it, there's other little moments where you think, oh, is he going to go off? Is he going to go off on a tangent? Brilliant, brilliant. The film has a couple of shock moments. Prospero lying asleep in a casket, and Francesca, Jane Asher, will encounter him. She'll look at him, and his eyes will suddenly open and stare at her. The Falcon attack. There's other moments. The ugliness of Alfredo's demise in the ape suit, but it's wonderfully well done. The choreography, the music by David Lee, the performances are all exuberant. They're theatrical. You've got Vincent Price here, and Price is magnificent. He relishes every single line. He really has a lot of fun with this. It's one of his signature roles. I mean, he played a lot of these characters, of course, But as I said before, I don't see him as proper royalty or nobility. I see him as a proto-rock star enjoying the high life and just reveling in debauchery because I can. No one can stop me. You all want to be like me. You all want to be seen with me. So because of that, I can get away with murder. It's wonderful. A wonderful movie and an absolutely jaw-dropping restoration as well. The film, even when it's panned and scanned on TV from the 70s, still looked great, even though it was you weren't even watching half the movie back in those days. But now, on this sumptuous Blu-ray, it's just a work of art. As I say, Ingmar Bergman and the Seventh Seal, that's in there. Corman's definitely taken a few ideas from that, but beautifully brought in together a couple of Poe's best stories. And man, the film is an experience, an absolute ripe, bold extravagance of horror and gothic baroque extremes. And to put it in the same bracket as Suspiria, which I have done, visually, orally, it's a powerhouse, and you'll see the similarities, folks. I've said enough. The Red Death is abroad, and I have forbade or forbade the colour red in here, except for me and my luxurious Royal Stuart tartan. I have been and always shall be Kilt-Man at your services. Please keep it kilted, keep it Celtic, and I will see you all in the safety of Kilt Mansion, a land of debauchery.